Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar from Spec Innovations, Applying Workflow for Requirements Management, Issue Tracking, and Process Management. My name is Elizabeth Steiner, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Let's go over some quick housekeeping before we get started. During the presentation, feel free to send us questions using the panel on the right, and we will get them answered in the question and answer part of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, and we will make it available to you after the live presentation. So be sure to keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Dr. Steve Dam. Today he'll be showing you how to use workflow for different areas of the life cycle. Dr. Dam is the president and founder of Spec Innovations. He has been involved with research, experiments, operations analysis, software development, systems engineering, and training for more than 40 years. Dr. Dam participated in the development of C4ISR Architecture Framework and DoD Architecture Framework. He has also received Expert Systems Engineering Professional Certification from INCOSE. He currently is applying systems engineering techniques to various DoD, DOE, and commercial projects. And now I'll hand over the controls to Dr. Dam, and we will get started.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate the intro. So let's just jump right into it. Many of you have seen some of the earlier 4.0 features and kind of listings. So we're going to take a little more time getting into one of the key features that's new in 4.0, which is workflow. So workflow was added so that we could track different classes of information and with different status attributes. And so basically you can associate it with any particular class of information, and you'll see that you can add your own classes and your own attributes that you can track. It's set up so that any enumerated attribute, and that's attributes that have a list associated with them, can be used and defined as being in this workflow. So that can actually do other things more than just status, if that's what you want. So you can think about some other applications that might be of interest to you. Again, customizable permissions are set up for each transition element so that you can decide, and you do decide what the transition elements are. That's the enumerated items that you're looking at in the list. And then you have the ability, if you, after a transition, to lock it so that people can't come back and change that information. Again, also the notifications, if you remember the old version of the tool, we sent out lots of notifications. People found that a little distracting. So what we've done is focus notifications here in workflow to give you a way to see what's going on, the things you care about most. So that's why this works today. So the way you get to it is through our schema editor. There's actually a workflow part in that tab. And then each of the different things you need to do is shown there. And we're going to go walk through it. We give you a couple out of the box requirements and issues, but you can add your own set as you feel free as you want to try different things. So adding new workflow. So we're, the current workflow is displayed. And again, we showed that in that thing. And then of course, new classes can be added with the add workflow class. And there's a button for that. You'll see that at the top. If you want to model your workflow, you could actually use our state diagram. Unfortunately, right now it does not translate into the workflow itself, but it's a good way to model it and understand your workflows. We did our first one. We took a look at the capability maturity model integration standard that's out there and use that as a basic idea for our workflow process that we're implementing. Permissions, so again, different permissions are available now. It can be assigned to a specific user or a team of users as you need to. So again, you can define teams now at the administrative level of the organization. And so that's at an organizational level, and then project by project, you can set up your teams. And so email notifications, again, can be team focused as opposed to just to the individual user. Also, again, mentioned about the locking. So here the workflow editor is, you can see it, you're actually going in and that's the enumerated status attributes for issues. Again, those are modifiable. You can change those as you want to. So if you have an issue class that you want to be a little different or some different permission levels, you can certainly set that up very easily, and we'll show you how that's done. Notifications, again, as I mentioned, those are going to be assigned. Each of the users get that notification. It's an email that comes in, and you'll see that, and then it'll have a hyperlink to the entity that was changed, so you know what you're going to do next. So you can click right on that and go do your action for whatever you're supposed to do in the next stage of the process. Cross-project relationships help a lot with this as well, and it's also a way to hide information from people. So you are relating them at each of the different levels. So we'll show you how that also works with it. To do that, you go into the actual relationships tab or in the entity view itself, and you can go select and add the different relationships that way. Permitted users can look at the different diagrams and see the information. People who don't have access to it won't. The unpermitted users get a redaction. So in fact, let's go back and see that again. So if you look at the bottom of this, those cost requirements were things that this particular user could see, but the unpermitted user sees the redaction bars. And so that's another aspect of it that I think is very helpful, and it gives you, it's also part of that permissions-based part of the workflow as well. So now if you say, somebody says, well, gee, I'm supposed to have access to that because I have a task to do with it, then that's a place where you can go and ask for the access to it. That information is in a different project, so that's how that actually operates. So let's jump into the actual models to make this. They'll make this make a little more sense to you, I think. So here's my handy dandy, and in fact I'll plus this up a little bit so you can see a little easier. There we go. I imagine that was too small for a lot of people. So looking at it, you see this is our dashboard, and we're coming into it there. So to access workflow, we come into the schema editor, and again, it's available here over on the menu, schema editor, or I've pinned it up on my menu bar here, so it's easily accessible there. So I click on that, and I come down to workflow, and let's start with the ones we have already predefined, which are issue and requirement. And so we've set up these different stages. You always have an initial status, and then we have an open status, an in progress status, in review status, closed status. So those are the different pick lists that you'll see when we go look at the issue pick list and what's available for that. And then each of these states, here's your permission. So in the initial state, who has access to it? Well, usually you probably want everybody, so that's the default. But you may want to be the person being notified, so you just would select that person, be notified, and then they would be added to it. Then you go through and lock it if that's desired, and then you can go through and do that for all the other stages, do that for the different teams. So you notice how you can have multiple stages here, where you have different actions depending on what you're doing. Same thing with requirements is set up that same way. You can see the different statuses, approvals, who can reject them. So this is an example of it actually filled in. And then, and as you can see, actually, it did show up there. So actions also are available. I added that as a workflow class. So to add a new class, you just select that class, and it'll look for only entities that have attributes associated with them. So I could add a new one here, like risk, and then I want to get the enumerated property for it, the status. So now I can track risk status as well. Again, using the different status features that are already available with it. Now again, it might be mysterious where these come from, these different status availables from that thing. So what we're going to do is go find that status element in the actual risk class itself. So if I come down to the risk, select it. So I went to classes in Scheme Editor, right? And then I go to risk. And so I then look at my properties, my attributes I'm available, and status is one of the standard ones as open, duplicate, declined, resolved. Okay, so if you can kind of remember those three. In fact, let's do it another way. You do know, I hope, that you can always create another tab with the same information by just creating a new browser window. And there's that same information again. So now what I've got is the ability to show you two tabs at the same time. I find myself doing this a lot, actually, where I'm trying to compare things or I'm trying to look at things in the tool. So there's those different ones. Now if I want to go over to workflow and go back to workflow, oops, oh, I did the wrong thing there. User error. There we go. Let's go back to the Scheme Editor. And notice, by the way, I shortened it. So now my menu is it's dropped off, so I've got to go back over here to get it. That's a feature. So workflow for risk. So here we go. So here we go. We got the open, we got the duplicate, we got declined and resolved. So you can see where those come from now, I think, pretty clearly. And so you can add those anytime you want by if you wanted to add a new property with a new set of things you want to track, you could do that easily right here. So that's all you do is to go through and use the Scheme Editor to add the new property you want. So again, a lot of things you can do with this, with the actual scheme editing and setting things up the way you want to. Now, once you set them up, and these, by the way, are owner level permissions that you need to have for this. So to do this for the project. So that's an important factor as well to realize. So you can do that for anything you want to go through. That status. For the action, we actually created something called unclassified secret, top secret. So we were doing that to show you how you could use something different than just the status kinds of things, which is what people usually use it for. Again, we have the same kind of thing going on for issues. So issue tracking and risk. So I hope that makes that pretty clear how to set it up. Now, how is it actually used? So the way that's used is if you go then to any of these items, and now you want to track. Let's go back and let's go back here to workflow. Save that and get back to workflow. So let's go look at risk, which is the one we just added. So here again, I can add that transition I want to go to. So from initial, I want to go to open status, and then from open status, I want to go to duplicate, or I might want to do declined, or I even might want to do resolved in this particular thing. So again, those are three different statuses that I might be able to go to. And then from that transition, like it would, if it's duplicate, then you'd say, who is it that could actually duplicate it? And so this is where it maybe comes back to open. And so you can work with it that way. So again, these are ways to work with it. That's why I say, if you notice now, this is a way I'm kind of doing this ad hoc. It'd be much better to actually do this from a diagram itself. And so again, if you want to model that using the state diagram or one of those other diagrams, that's certainly a good way to do it. We have a whole thing on this now up on the website where you can see the help package for this kind of thing. So let's go take a look at risk for fun now. And so I can look at my risks and my risk entities. And so I can open the entity view of that and see those different things about the status. So if I change, see, I can't change the status now because it's open. I haven't set those permissions and things. So I need to do that as part of the team and work with that. So again, there's things you need to do as you're working through it. By the way, and one of the things you're going to find also that you'll want to do is be sure that your browser is up to date with it. So if you've done something one picture, one side here, make sure you update the browser on the other side, because sometimes they'll get out of sync, and so you want to watch for that. So let's take another example. We've done it for a requirement. So this is one I have completely set up. Let's take a requirement, open its entity view. And so as I'm working on the requirement and I decide I'm happy with it, and then now I want to go from status to in review. So I save that, and then it would send out the notification to the next person who needs to do the review part of it. Now what's nice too is I can have the ability to, on the dashboard, to see that. So here's the one I just changed, and it's in review, and you can see that right now. So the dashboard lets me also find that status and track it and work with it and adjust to it as you need to. So just a lot of different ways to work with that workflow and to do the things you want to do in your actual management of your requirements or your issue tracking, or again, anything else you want to use it for. Particularly like it for the actions, because now the way we do model-based project management, we actually will set up our process. And now each process step can be a piece of that as an action in the model. And so if I actually then model that information, I can use that to help me track who's doing what on what task. So it's a great way to do your model-based project management as well. Let's see. So that's the main things that are going on with workflow. Why don't I throw it open for some questions now, and we'll see if we can see if we've got some questions. I see we have a question that says, can we get notifications via IM? Not right at the moment. Instant messaging isn't set up in it, but that's actually something that'd be very interesting to look into, to how to do that in the future. Elizabeth, do you see any other questions?
We do have a few more questions. If you haven't had a chance to do so, use the panel on the right to ask us some more questions. For now, we have a few other questions. Our first question is, how do you add new users?
Okay, so that's now at the organizational level. A couple of different ways of doing things. First of all, you share in the project with different users in different ways. So I can go through, and if they're in my organization, they will show up automatically for them to be selected. So I can add them to this project very easily, and then I can change the status of them, once they're up here. So maybe someone's a reviewer instead of an actual owner of it. So again, you can track that. In fact, one of the rules I have is that every project should have at least 2 owners, because you really want to make sure you have control over it and that people can work with it. By the way, if there's 2 owners, you can't easily delete it. You can't accidentally delete it very easily. So the other way is, if you have to bring new people in, you need to do that at the organizational level. And the organizational level within a certain organization, so this is Spec Innovations, is the organization I have here. These are a number of projects I have personally, okay? Now, if someone shares a project with me, it'll show up here on my dashboard here. But if I want to actually add a whole new user, that's done here at the administrative level. And that way you can get to different user sets within that. And so let me go to my one that I'm in charge of here in InnoSlate. And you can see here, I don't want to confuse you with all the other stuff that's going on here. So this shows you your daily usage. It shows you the licenses that are used, things like that. So here's where you would add a user. And by the way, here's also where you change roles and where you can add teams. So you can create teams of people to do things. So if I want to create a software team. Okay, and it's always good to give it a description. That way I will go ahead and add the different personnel with it. So I click into there, and then I can go ahead and add the users that I want. So obviously Bobby and Josh and me, just for fun. And so that's going to be our software team. So now that I've done that, come back. There's my software team, my 3 people. So now I can use that as a team with some of the other activities as I go along. So this is where now if I go on and go back to the dashboard and go back to that problem, sample problem 1. And so now when I go into workflow, bring back my sidebar, then I can now have the team available to me for these different things. So let's go to requirement, and let's say this is just the software team. So add the software team to it. So let me just double check that, sorry. There we go. And yeah, workflow, okay. Okay, well, it's interesting. Not seeing it. So anyway, so that's how you go use that portion of it, and then the team would be notified as things go on. So let's see, and a couple others. Lizzie, what other?
We have a few other questions, but I'm going to skip ahead. We have a request to speak more about the classifications tab.
I'm sorry?
We have a request to speak more about the classifications tab.
Oh, okay, that was something I made up. So that was a thing where I'd gone through and added that as a workflow item for the action. And so what I did to do that was, if I go over to action, I'd added that classification thing right here. So that's an attribute I had added to that particular task. So that's a way you could see that information and use that to have workflow as well. So that's something we could do for multi-level security kinds of things, or again, permission-based accesses that you want to do in other ways. So that's, again, you can kind of use your imagination as to what you want to do best with it.
Our next question is, how can I set permissions for users so that they can't see certain information?
Oh, okay. So the way that's done is and I can't exactly show it because I'm the owner of this administrator, so I have access to all the projects. But what you do is you have a project where someone doesn't have access, and so what you do is you bring in a piece of information to that you create a relationship. So let's just click on anything here, and a relationship. And then if you go to anything and you want to add existing, now over here shows you your different projects you have available to you. And I have to scrunch up this, make this a little wider so you can see the whole list easily. But you see the different projects I have available to me. So I can open any one of those projects and use that to now search for other pieces of information that I'm looking for. So if I want to say, I can look for, put the right syntax here. So our let's see, I'm trying to remember what else is in that one. So anyway, that will give you the other things you're looking for. So, and that's now, I'm now in a totally different document. I'm in a totally different database as I click on that. So, and again, these are things that'll give you that back to it. So that now shows up in my database. Any other questions?
We do. Can you customize the status choices?
Oh, yes, yes, of course. And so the way to do that again is come back into the specific classes. And let's say I didn't like my choices here. I wanted to have something else. I would add another option here. So no one. And that adds another option. And so you can see I just added that right here with that property. If I save that, come back over here to the other example. Let me get that through. And action. Good. And open now that entity view. I can see the different classification options that are available to me. So, okay. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I need to go do it from here. Try. Interesting. Okay. They found a feature. Okay, are there any other questions?
Our next question is the workflow on the document level or the entity level?
So the workflow is on the project level. So it's actually a project level. And so it's throughout the whole set of documents that are associated within a project. So you can have multiple documents within the project. If you want to have separate items, separate documents in separate projects, that's actually even recommended at this point, because the cross-project relationships make it so easy now to have things separately. So if you really want to separate things and track them separately, that's one of the best ways to do it. So, but usually people will have a set of documents that have the same kind of workflow associated with them. So again, it's available either way.
Our next question is, you mentioned that the modeling option was separate, but incredibly useful. How do they translate?
Oh, so the modeling is all within the same tool. And so we have different diagrams that you have available to you to do modeling. And there's 27 different diagram sets that we have currently. And so probably one of the ones you'd want to see most would be a state machine diagram. And so that's a standard SysML diagram. So we have all the SysML diagrams in it. So state machine actually has been around for much longer than SysML. So that's one option. One of my favorites, of course, is the action diagram to do that kind of modeling as well. So again, you can track that as you need to.
Our next question, is there a tutorial on LML?
Yes, we've done a number of tutorials on LML, lifecycle modeling language, and you can download the standard at lifecyclemodeling.org. It's available. It's an open standard, so it's available for anybody. You can go in and see the effect of it also in our tool, in our scheme editor, which is where we were, because this is the language, this actions, artifacts, things like that as well. Plus, we've done numerous webinars and papers on it, and there's a book in the works for LML that's coming out soon.
We have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you use the state diagram to make a workflow active?
No, not yet. That's something that we have on our roadmap, but we have not implemented that yet. That's certainly a way I'd like to be able to interact with it.
I'm just going to give it another second, make sure that we don't have any other questions.
Okay.
All right, well, we would like to thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. Make sure to join us next time for Model-Based Systems Engineering with NSLate. As always, we'll also send the recording and slide deck to everyone that attended today. For more resources, we encourage you to visit our website and our blog, as well as connect with us on social media through the NSLate user group or through Twitter using the handle @NSLate. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you again for your attendance, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar. Please enjoy the rest of your day.